Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cyber Weekly. The Cyber Weekly is a podcast which talks about cybersecurity and book reviews with me, Deogratius Okello, Josephine Olok, and Angella Nabbanja. This week we invited Julius. Julius Wakoli. Julius Wakoli is a seasoned digital forensics expert who holds a master's degree in forensics and information security from Gujarat Forensics University in India. He is currently employed by Uganda Police as digital forensics specialist under the Directorate of Forensics Services, whilst teaching institutions like Isbat University, UMI, and Milima. Welcome, Julius, to the show.
Thank you, Deo. Thank you, Josephine. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, so could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity?
Well, you gave a very good summary of me. Maybe just to re-echo. My name is Julius Wakoli, like Deo said. I'm a law enforcement officer, but before that, I'd worked for a couple of private organizations in the IT space. I am a consultant with a number of institutions, including those in academia, some of which there was actually mentioned. I have a strong background in IT, information security, information systems, cyber forensics, and now on my last mile of the MBA. My journey into cybersecurity began way back in 2017, thereabout, after I attended one of the trainings at NITAU. I was fascinated by how vulnerabilities can be exploited and how crucial it is to protect digital aspects, especially those on the critical infrastructure. I found this space quite intriguing, so I decided to pursue a master's degree in digital forensics and information security. And while I did that, I also pursued a host of many other certificates, or what we call certifications, in the domains of cybersecurity and digital forensics, which I've continued to date. Please don't ask me which one I'm taking on right now, because I'm not. I decided to take a sabbatical. Unfortunately, the bad guys never take sabbaticals, so I think I should not have even done that. So the journey into cybersecurity and forensics at large has been driven by a strong curiosity about protecting digital information and a commitment to staying ahead in this dynamic field of the cyber ecosystem and data forensics. I think that could be a summary on about myself and how I got into the space of cybersecurity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julius, and it's a real pleasure to have you on board. We've had a few people in forensics, but I really admire, the work that you do and all the complexities. Was there anything that really stood out for you that made you say to yourself, I really want to get into cyber forensics? I mean, was there something that inspired you? Because I noticed you did start off in IT, but was there anything that stood out for you that made you say, I must be in this field?
That is a good question. I always get that a lot. I began my career as in the IT domain, where I gained a valuable experience in managing networks and systems. While I pursued my bachelor's at Makerere University, that was some years back, I had the opportunity of working with the Directorate of Information and Communication Technology, that is ICT, as a network admin throughout my entire period as a student. And when I graduated, I didn't actually look out for a job. There was one, I think, that was waiting for me. I was actually onboarded as an IT manager at Truck Uganda. Working in the IT field provided me with a solid foundation in understanding how a technology infrastructure operates and the importance of maintaining the various security principles, information security principles, cybersecurity principles. So what really inspired this transition into cyber forensics was encountering incidents and understanding the forensic aspect of cybersecurity. And as it was becoming crucial, I needed to really get to understand what exactly actually happens when you befall an incident that requires an investigative touch. I was inspired by a colleague of mine. I don't know if I can mention his name. I didn't actually seek his approval, but he was specialized in cyber forensics, and he demonstrated this impact through thorough investigation techniques and resolving complex cases. So this exposure sparked my interest in learning more about data forensics, some people may call it cyber forensics, methodologies and technologies. So ideally, the skills I got in the IT, such as attention to detail, problem-solving skills, understanding the system and network architectures, complemented my transition into the cyber forensic space, because for you to become a very good seasoned forensic expert, you should actually have your fundamentals and technical abilities very high. So I realized my passion actually lied in this skill to investigate cyber incidents, protecting data evidence, and also contributing to the cyber security practices, as well as the justice system. So because ultimately, whatever we do as forensic experts, our evidence ends up in court, and you have to adduce that as an expert witness when the time actually comes. Thank you.
Well, Julius, I have a great appreciation for men in uniform and what they do to keep us safe. And I would wonder, when you were joining the Uganda Police Force as a digital cyber forensic, did you have to first do that training? The military training, is it military training? I think that's what scares so many people away, but they would also want to join. Did you have to, as a professional, have to first do that training?
Yes, everyone actually who works with law enforcement should actually should undergo the basic training, which is usually 9 months. Yes, I did undergo that training. It was a rigorous training, but while you do that training,
you don't have to shoot a gun.
Yes, I do, because it comes. It's part of the package. So you get basic trainings, and after that, you get into your spaces and then try to serve the country.
Right. So are you at liberty to tell us what your role at the Directorate of Forensics Services entails? What's a typical day?
Wow. Am I at liberty? I will not give specifics, but I can give generic roles, because I didn't actually seek the permission for me to be able to speak to the public about what happens there. But as a cyber forensics or data forensics expert, one of my roles, incident response. Many times, I actually do that a lot. And with incident response, I mean responding to cases like unauthorized access, what people usually call hacking incidents. You also required to conduct forensic examinations, analysis of digital evidence that is extracted from computers, network devices, servers, virtual machines, the cloud, evidence that is seated on your DVRs, your NVRs, and a lot of many other IoT devices that could actually have the digital evidence. The purpose of that is, like I said earlier, to make sure that the evidence that you're preserving, acquiring, and analyzing ultimately has to be presented in a court of law as an expert witness, which I also do many times. I have been to courts trying to defend the reports that I do personally. So I'm just giving a generic overview because I can't diverge into the specifics. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So when we dive into digital forensics, when we think of the role of the digital forensics practitioner, we assume that involves collecting of evidence, which will lead to prosecution prosecuting in computer, mobile, information, and cyber-related crimes. Can you walk us through a typical digital forensics investigation from start to finish? The generic one, obviously. So, yeah.
The generic.
Yeah.
There are so many models out there that we normally follow as forensic experts, especially when you are collecting digital evidence. But many of them actually follow the generic 6 steps or 5 steps. Some actually have 5 steps. But the first is usually identification. It starts with identification of the incident. Okay, it could be suspicion of unauthorized activity. It could be a security breach. It could be a malware incident. It could be data theft. It could be fraud or any kind of cyber attack. So having identified that, you're definitely going to define your scope. Because when you fail to define your scope, then you risk going beyond probably the time that you've been allocated for that particular case. You go beyond the resources that are required. So scope is very important as an investigator. And then while you're still in the identification phase, you may have to determine the systems that you're going to collect evidence from. That includes the devices and the different sources of data that you're going to examine. This also may involve finding potential sources of evidence or digital evidence for that matter. Then the other second process or stage is called the preservation stage. So having identified all the potential sources of evidence, so you set up what you call a proper case management, okay, where you're going to ensure that an acceptable chain of custody, or what in court we call chain of evidence, okay. So you're going to maintain that chain of custody, which ensures that whoever actually comes in contact with digital evidence, their actions are documented. Julius received this computer, in what state it was. You have to document that. The serial numbers, did it have a broken screen? Was it powered on? Was it powered off? All those nitty-gritties must be documented, and that's what we call documenting your chain of custody, because it's very, very helpful. It helps you actually maintain the integrity of the digital evidence that you're dealing with. So in the preservation stage, you as well deal with preventing or deterring changes that may be introduced into your digital evidence. That is by isolating the systems of the network. I'll give an example. If it is a malware incident, then definitely at this stage, you're going to ensure that you disconnect the systems that are infected to prevent that malware from maybe jumping onto other different hosts or different workstations, jumping onto different network segments, such that you have one area that you're concentrating on. And also you look at the different potential sources of evidence, digital evidence, and then you collect the relevant logs, collecting volatile data. Volatile data is very, very crucial. I often tell my students and some of the stakeholders that the first thing that you always do when you get onto a crime scene, especially those that involve unauthorized access, hacking, those that involve malware, the first thing that you always do is to collect volatile data. Volatile data is basically collecting data that is resident in RAM. So that data, RAM is very rich with a lot of information. As we all know that when a computer boots up, the last stage, the operating system is loaded into RAM. So everything that you're using the computer for is actually resident in RAM, including the commands the attacker actually typed. If the attacker was maybe using a terminal, was using maybe a tool like PSExec, maybe they're using a remote access tool. It could be maybe DW agent, it could be AnyDesk, and perhaps they are stealing information from your systems. So all those commands and those connections to your system, which are providing a remote access or a backdoor to the command and control server, are resident in RAM. So in the event that you just shut down the PC, you're going to lose all that information. So the best thing is always to dump RAM before you make any other decision. So the other phase, the third phase, is usually the acquisition, where now you make the copies of the digital evidence. So if it is a laptop, you're going to, of course, use different tools. I normally use FTK, which comes in handy, especially with the Windows operating system. You should actually, as a forensic practitioner, you should actually know the different tools that you can use to forensically image the different operating systems. What may work for Windows may not actually work for Linux, and so it may not also work for Mac machines. So you should actually be in position to know which tool actually you're going to use. If you have maybe a Mac machine, I know I'll use maybe a tool like Paladin. Paladin is able to create a forensic image for me. Are you going to remove a hard drive? So all these decisions are made at the acquisition level. You could still collect live data, which is still memory. You could actually pick logs from the routers, logs from the EDRs, endpoint detection and recovery tools, devices. You may be able to collect information from IDSs, IPSs, firewalls. The router is actually very rich with so many logs that actually can actually give you visibility over what actually an attacker was actually doing onto your network. The fourth stage, which you undergo, is what we call, it's actually a 2-in-1. It's examination and analysis. Now that you've collected this information, you've acquired it, what are you going to do with it? So you go with that information probably into your lab, and then create a copy. You, as a rule of thumb, you never work on the original copy of the data that you've actually collected. So you're supposed to create a copy, and then you work with that copy. So in examination, you're basically analyzing that acquired data. You're trying now to put the different pieces together such that you connect the dots, maybe that speak to that particular case. There, of course, you may have to go into unconventional places. The bit about these forensic tools is that they're able to carve out information from the unconventional places. We all know that when you delete a file, it's not actually permanently deleted. So it's basically reallocated in a different cluster, say maybe the unallocated clusters and the different Slack spaces. So for you to be able actually now to pick out that information, to carve it out, maybe by the time you go to a scene, the suspect or the person, the person of interest could have actually deleted that file. So how are you going to use these tools and your skill set to be able to extract or cover that information? So while you're doing examination analysis, you're still going to do what we call reconstruction of your events. And that's where I normally tell people, having the tools at your disposal is not enough, but having the skills is very, very important, because you could have the tools, which actually are going to definitely pick out that information for you, but you making a story, coming out with a story out of what the tools are actually getting for you, getting that evidence, knowing that the evidence I'm actually looking out for is maybe in the cache memory. It could be in maybe mismatched extensions. Maybe someone could have steganographed maybe a particular piece of evidence, or it could have even been encrypted. So how are you going to pick out that information to make sense out of it? So you perform what we call timeline analysis, where you look at a series of events, the user events. How was this user actually behaving on the computer right before maybe the incident actually happened? And then the final stage is documentation, or what sometimes you may call presentation, depending on which books actually you read. In this phase, actually, now you document all your findings, everything actually that you've been able to pick out from your evidence, and then document also your methodologies, the tools that you've used, including the versions. The versions of the tools is very, very important. How you're able to maintain the integrity of this data, such that the jury before you or the judge can be able to believe the evidence that you're actually giving to them, that it has not been tampered with. And how do you maintain that integrity? The tools themselves are able to do that for you, or sometimes actually you can create what you call hash values, which are mathematically generated gibberish characters that cannot be changed until that evidence actually has been altered. And then the final thing that actually happens is the expert witness testimony. Because at the end of the day, you must actually go to court and then tell them, hey, this is what I did. And according to my knowledge and experience, this evidence is as true as it comes. Forensic evidence is not, digital forensics is not a field where you're going to give hearsay evidence. It must be scientific, it must be proven, it must be actually repeatable. In the event that maybe doubt is cast into your information or into your report, another independent laboratory could go through the entire process that you went through, and they should be able to get 99.9% of the same artifacts that you present in that report. I don't know if that has been a summary, but it goes beyond that as well. But that's, in short, those are the processes that we undergo when we have a case to investigate. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you. Fascinating and very detailed. I hope that you have been able to prosecute more times than not, that you've been successfully able to see people arrested and charged for crimes most of the time. So thank you for that very comprehensive answer. I know you know our environment in Uganda is a little special. What are the challenging aspects of working with digital evidence in Uganda? I know you talked a little bit about preserving the integrity of digital evidence, but do you have challenges with special challenges, it being Uganda and how we know how things work, especially in the courts of law? I know that there are also technologies that perhaps are new, which I don't know if you have challenges dealing with. We are increasingly having cloud-based systems. We have encrypted data. How do you deal with all those challenges? The challenges that I've mentioned, but also the fact that we have a very special environment in Uganda.
Thank you, Josephine. The challenges are quite many, and they're not specific to Uganda. At least I've exchanged with a number of peers in the same space, and oftentimes they will tell you the challenge is actually the same. One biggest challenge is I would start with is resources. Resources, not just in terms of finance, but in terms of the tools that are available for you to be able to execute your duties. Many of these tools are very, very expensive. That's why in most cases you won't even find them in most of these forensic audit firms. They'll use the rudimentary ways of preserving evidence and then coming up. Actually, I usually call it an audit. They perform audits, not forensic investigations, because most of these tools cost millions and millions of money. So resources is one of the biggest challenge. Resources also comes in with the other part of having the technical skill set. Most of the labs and many of the organizations actually lack the requisite specialists in this digital forensic space. And once actually you don't have good personnel to handle this evidence, at some point you're going to end up flouting some of the procedures. And one thing I've actually found interesting in this digital forensics and cybersecurity space is that even when you're adducing this evidence in court, the lawyers know that you have the evidence, but all they're questioning is the procedure. How were you able actually to preserve this evidence? And it's devoid of any kind of alteration. So technical skill sets, technical expertise, and having the skilled personnel to execute these tasks is one great challenge that the space of digital forensics is still actually having. The other thing is the volatile nature of the digital evidence. Digital evidence is highly volatile. What I mean by that is the longer you take to preserve that evidence, the higher the chances are you will actually lose quantifiable evidence. So as a forensic practitioner, you always ensure that the evidence that if a case is actually presented to you, you actually follow what we call the order of volatility. You start collecting information from the most volatile data. That could be data from your RAM, your cache memories, routing tables, information like that reside maybe even the CPU actually has what we call registers and the cache levels, which actually store good information that can be picked. The nature of evidence, you talked about the cloud systems. Yeah, that have actually posed a great challenge, especially with a lot of organizations actually going into virtualization and using IoT devices, encryption technologies. Recently, I think at the beginning of this year, around March, April there, Microsoft implemented actually by default right now, most devices have BitLocker. So if you updated or updated your computer around from April to date, you could actually be having a BitLocker. So it is enabled by default. What does that mean? If I encountered a computer that had a BitLocker encryption and probably I didn't find it on, it means the chances of me actually getting that evidence, which is going to be admissible in court, are very, very low. Because once a device is actually encrypted, it means you're going to only create an image, or what we call a flat image. So you will have your image, right? But that image will only have 000 data. The sectors actually have 0 data. So you won't actually have anything. When we speak of encryption, very many devices lately actually, oftentimes you walk at a scene and you realize 80% of the devices actually have an encryption. technology on it. And as we're also going into quantum computing, I was reading into quantum encryption, and that actually that blew off my mind. It's something actually more than the traditional cryptography that actually we've been looking at. It's much more harder. It secures actually our devices much more harder. Yes, encryption actually becomes one of the greatest challenges actually we're having. And then also when I look at most of the computers actually that are being created right now, many of them, I'll say maybe 80-90% created with SSDs. Many of them actually have soldered SSDs on their motherboards. So these SSDs, much as they're good, they're fast, they're actually good, but then they pose a challenge for digital forensic experts because of their smart technology and then the trim features that are within them. So as opposed to the normal HDDs, what an SSD does is if you have enabled trim on your laptop, it means after every whenever you delete a file, every day it's actually going to overwrite those different sectors actually that are housing your data. So the chances of you carving out data from unconventional places like the unallocated space, the slack space, are also diminished. The other things actually I found quite intriguing and are a bit on the rise is steganography. It is something actually people underlooked, but it's actually gaining traction. People are hiding data behind images, hiding data behind videos and things like that. So if you don't have a forensic tool that's able to carve information based on file extension mismatch, chances are you won't actually get the information actually looking for. Because if I steganographed a photograph and you didn't know that I had that, so a tool actually, if you don't have a tool like maybe QuickStego, Stego, MFT, or NCase, Autopsy is also able to tell you if it's able to aggregate all those files, all those images that seem to have steganographic content in them. So having the knowledge and getting to understand that this particular image has been steganographed is one skill set that the forensic examiner must actually have. And then we have the size and the distribution of the evidence. You realize that many of our computers actually that are being manufactured, including the servers, including even the virtual space, the cloud computing, they have a lot of storage. A lot of this evidence is actually thrown onto different devices. The complexity of picking out that information from these different devices actually will call in for some level of expertise, some level of resources, because you're not going to be alone or 2 or 3 people working on a case of a magnitude of about maybe 100 devices. Okay, you have maybe 80 workstations, you have about 10 servers, each seated on a different network segmentation, and then you have these different SIM that is security incidents and events management SIM tools. You have these different firewalls from which you need to collect this evidence, EDRs. Okay, so how are you going to pick all this information that is seated on these different devices that you have? And then maybe the other thing I could also talk about is the legal issues. Digital evidence. Digital evidence must actually have some legal backing. Just because I'm suspected to have committed a crime, it doesn't actually give you the right to image my phone without my consent. So you must obtain some kind of legal backing for you to be able to have that evidence. In the absence of maybe my consent or a court order, that evidence, however good it will be inadmissible in the courts of law. So legal dynamics also pose a great challenge, because sometimes you may have a situation that actually can't wait, but now you need to process this evidence for it not to be altered with, or maybe changed, or even in someone trying maybe to delete it. So in the process of trying to get that legal documentation that gives you the mandate to collect this digital evidence, you could actually end up losing valuable information. There's a growing issue of malware in most of our digital devices. Most of the attackers now are getting more sophisticated. I was at I may not be in position to share the specifics, but I was at one of the organization, and I realized they were hit because of a simple keylogger that was actually created and deposited on their systems. So what this keylogger was doing was harvesting credentials, and somehow, because this attacker had an insider, so they were also able to use remote access tools that were able to grant them unattended access as and when they needed to get that information. So they used just a simple keylogger, which was even less than 2 MB. Okay, so that keylogger did a lot of havoc. It was deposited on a number of computers, a number of servers. So this adversary was able actually to get complete visibility over the network, because everything that the users actually were typing in were being logged by this malicious code that was deposited on their servers. So those could be some of the challenges. And maybe the other challenge I could speak about lastly is the latent. Digital evidence is latent. By that I mean you'll need to use specialized skills for you to be able to pick out that information from unconventional places. You need special tools, special carving tools that are able to look into the unallocated space, look into the Slack space, and pick out that information that is residual. Residual evidence is also very, very important. Information that has been deleted but reallocated to different clusters on your hard drive. So we refer to digital evidence as being latent because you will need special tools. It's evidence that you cannot actually just pick. You just open your laptop and then you start looking for it. No, you'll need specialized tools for that. If I remember any, I'll be able to submit. Thank you.
Assuming you did.
Angela, maybe before you come in, I remember your question had about the solutions, I think. Did I answer the solutions? I've just actually remembered.
You talked about the challenges, but I think there are such huge challenges. I don't know if you have time to answer the solutions.
The solutions. Of course, the solutions, one of the I think the solutions for dealing with the new digital, you say digital devices and technologies, of course, is continuous education and training of investigators, and also collaboration with technical experts, because you can't be good at everything. You need to leverage on this collaboration with other players within the same space for you to be able to get that. And then you talked about cloud-based systems. Okay, so how are you able to do that? So the bit about some of these forensic tools is that they're able to, they have the capability of extracting information even in the cloud environment. So we leverage, we use such systems for us to be able to harness that kind of information. And also sometimes we also, if the case is so big in nature, we can actually also use the help of the legal frameworks, especially for companies whose jurisdiction is not within the country. So how are you going to obtain that information and preserving it, that you should be able to, because every the issue we have with digital evidence is it cuts across different jurisdictions. So what may actually constitute a crime in one country may not be the same. Someone actually is in the UK and they're doing some havoc in an organization in Uganda. So how are you able to extract that information even in cloud? So you can have some what we call mutual legal assistance that can actually help you to pick out this information and preserve it in a nature that is admissible as well. And then for encrypted data, I think we also talked about encrypted data. Of course, there are tools that are able to break some level of encryption. But even in the absence of such tools, you can sometimes, of course, collaborate with some encryption experts, even the vendors of these tools. They're able to maybe create for you an update that can be able to break a particular tool, but not all the time that is done. I remember the case of Apple FBI around 2016, which was an issue of balancing security and privacy. So FBI needed to unlock an iPhone 5 for a certain terrorist, I think in San Bernardino. And then Apple said, we can't do that because we value the privacy of our customers. So there was a lot of legal documentation that exchanged in between there until Apple still stood their ground and said, we can't be able to give you that information because we pride in our privacy. So what FBI did, they used a rudimentary hacker who was able actually to exploit a certain vulnerability within Apple, and then they were able to break that encryption. And then again, Apple comes back and tells them, hey, what vulnerability is that so that we can patch it. So FBI told them, you didn't help us break this encryption, but I mean to us to help you actually show you what that vulnerability is. So some of those are the challenges. The challenges and solutions to some of to the question that Joseph actually asked. Thank you, Angela.
Yes. And assuming that you're dealing with people in your investigations, how do you handle witnesses that are tampering with evidence and witness interviews and testimonies?
How do we handle witness interviews?
Yes.
Testimonies. And then the other is,
what are the some of the red flags that indicate that someone is tampering with evidence?
The red flags that someone is tampering with evidence. Okay. First of all, as a practitioner, as a forensic practitioner, you must have good interview skills. Yeah. Besides doing a background check, because sometimes you may not have all the time to do a background check on your respondents, or the people you're going to actually interview during maybe a case conferencing or something like that. But it's always better to have an interview plan. Okay, so you structure a plan on how you're going to ask these questions. They have to be they have to follow each other, not asking this, asking that, asking this, and asking. So you must have actually an interview plan, and then people get so comfortable when you establish a good rapport with them, making them feel like it's not a do or die. If you didn't do this, we're going to arrest you and all those things. So you have to establish a good rapport with them, and then you encourage openness and then cooperation. Some of them, even when someone actually did something, I usually tell people that many times what people consider to be an insider threat is not a bad guy, not all the time. An insider threat could be actually a good guy who was actually inadvertently given out maybe access to the bad guy out there. It could be maybe I've left my computer unattended to, and then someone actually comes, logs in, and just maybe perform a certain fraudulent activity. It could be maybe I'm too lazy to remember passwords, so I just write my small password on a sheet, I put it right below my keyboard. So you're not a bad person, but because of your laissez-faire nature, you left your password there, and then someone was able to exploit that kind of vulnerability. So the insider threat is usually not that person. So in interviewing these people, you could actually get information that actually can help you scope down your investigation. Because one thing I've actually realized in this digital forensic space is that if you start off on a wrong foot, you're going to have a long day having to investigate that case. So it's better to narrow down the scope as much as possible, other than chasing so many tools, because you're going to end up imaging all these computers, and not all of them actually will have the evidence. Not all of them. So while you're investigating, it helps you find out the pertinent issues, the most crucial sources of evidence. You could even identify people that you think are suspects. Not everyone. The other thing is people looking at people's faces. There are some people who are disadvantaged by their own looks. Naturally, they may look like the suspects, but they are not. So you remove that as well. Asking open-ended questions rather than having to ask leading questions. Questions actually that allow a witness to provide detailed information, not questions that are going to allow the witness actually respond yes or no. Because if someone is if you're asking, is it true that you are the only one with access to the confidential system, the confidential files on the file system, person will just say yes, or they will just say no, but is that enough information to guide you in your investigation? The other thing is active listening. While you're listening, it's actually a skill that needs that every forensic practitioner actually should have. Listening to everything that the witness responds to is very, very good, because it helps you actually clarify so many questions, and having a clear understanding of that helps a lot in guiding your forensic investigation going forward. Taking notes. People always ask me, why are you always writing? But it helps me, because at the end of the day, you're going to go back to the laboratory, and then you have to now piece all the evidence that actually you've picked alongside the testimonies that have actually been given to you. Because if you've interviewed, say, maybe 3 or 4 people, each of these people will give you their own versions of the story, and you're able to piece the different dots, and then it narrows down your search. And then also ensuring that the confidentiality of your witness is actually upheld. It's not because Julius, a network admin or a systems engineer with company ABC, told me this, and then you go around sharing it with maybe the higher hierarchy of the organization. That is actually very wrong, because you don't even know who you're sharing this information with. So you must be able to maintain that level of confidentiality with all the information that you're getting from these witnesses. And then the other thing, which is actually also very important, is impartiality. As digital forensic practitioners, we subscribe to a number of ISO standards. One of them is the ISO 17025, which in clause 4, I think clause 4, I think 4.1, it speaks about impartiality. Okay, so you don't influence the witnesses' statements and perceptions, because maybe someone someone within the corridors has actually told you, I think Julius, because everyone is talking about Julius, they've been seeing him maybe doing this on systems. So you don't have to be you don't have to take sides. You have to be impartial in your kind of interviewing, such that you get all the required information. So if you take sides, even your kind of questioning will hinge towards implicating that person even before you get the evidence from their systems. And then the red flags. The red flags are quite a handful. The biggest is lack of cooperation. Yeah, lack of cooperation. Sometimes you could have a hostile witness and all you're asking is they're just repulse. They're telling you, I don't know. So they're not cooperating. So that way, you may actually think perhaps they are obstructing your investigation. So that could be a big red flag. And then a person actually who gives you overly detailed explanations. They may have rehearsed all these explanations. So it's best that actually you get to find some kind of inconsistencies in what actually they're telling you. Because they may have rehearsed their statements. I know they may ask me this because if I did something, if maybe I installed malware on the system, and perhaps my computer was actually the source of that keylogger, chances are the questions that are going to be asked is who created the network share on your PC. There was a Kaspersky, who blocked that Kaspersky for you to be able to maybe use your flash. If it was a keylogger that was actually sent to you via email, who actually downloaded that attachment and was able to execute it? Did it come through the formal email account of the organization, or were you using Gmail for those companies actually that allow internet and they have no whitelisting? So all those questions, if someone actually has rehearsed them, they are able to actually tell you inconsistent procedures when you're asking them questions. So they'll sound so confident. I've found this actually a lot, and you'll ask someone questions and they'll give you what actually you want to hear. At the end of the day, you find they are the actual source of the problem within the organization. And then unusual behavior. It's a very important thing. You asked me earlier if we undergo training, and one of the things actually we are trained is for you to identify unusual behavior. Unusual behavior could be someone who is actually having that suspicious behavior. Yeah, he's asking you, is it possible that if I deactivated my location activity on my Gmail, is it possible that they can track me? Someone who is asking questions, you realize they're actually leading you to some kind of angle. So that forms part of unusual behavior. Then signs of alteration. So if I got your PC, I imaged it, even your laptop, and then I realized maybe there is some kind of file signature alterations. You know that if I can actually create a Word document, and then by simply removing the file extension, the .doc or .docx, and then I replace it with .mp3, that file extension will change to a media format. Actually, when you send that file to someone, it will look like a media file. But when they attempt to double click on it or play it, it won't actually play because the file signature has not changed. Now, Microsoft, most of these file systems actually use the file signature in reading each and every file that actually is stored on your PC. So if you change the document from its Word .doc to MP3, the file signature of that document will actually still remain the same. It doesn't change. So when you load this image of this computer into a forensic tool, there is a section for file mismatch. So that document will actually fall under that category. And I will be able to tell, oh, so Julius decided to change the file extension of this particular file, this document, to an MP3. Why was he actually changing it? So I can actually be able to maybe take it back and things like that, and be able to see what exactly they're trying to hide. And then the other thing is missing data. Some people actually, you'll find a very clean PC. Even someone will tell you, I've been using this PC for the last 3 years, but you look at it and it looks new. So that is one of the red flags. It means either someone has purged that information, they have wiped maybe the PC, and having presence of the presence of so many anti-forensic tools, especially like these wiping tools on your PC. Maybe if you're investigating unauthorized access and you realize someone has been using a lot of Metasploit, someone has been using a lot of maybe Wireshark for packet sniffing, it would actually tell you a lot of stuff. It could be one of the red flags. Okay. of course, someone will tell you, me, I'm into security, so I love reading. So you should be able to connect the different dots on that PC that you've got vis-a-vis the person's characters and things like that. So some of those what we usually find as red flags in the digital forensic space. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in for this episode. This has been the first part of this conversation. Stay tuned for the second part. But do let us know whether you like this conversation by putting it in the comment section. And if you like the channel, you can like and subscribe. And there's an episode we could recommend for you, which is episode 5, which is with Bayana Inwetwe, which was actually our first guest show episode. Other than that, see you all in the next episode.